If any of these 5 things annoy you, you should avoid online banks. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Reni. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're a returning subscriber, welcome back. I really do appreciate you for taking your time out of your busy day to watch this video. So if you are new here, you don't know, but I make content about financial literacy, career development, and lifestyle. And if I do say so, the content is pretty great. So you should join the family, hit that subscribe button down below, and hit that like button if this kind of content is what you like to watch. So in today's video, as you can tell by the title, we're going to be talking about online banks. And I'm talking about not just online banking, but the banks that are only found online. You can't find them in the wild, in a real life. So we're going to talk about them today and why you should avoid them in some cases. Before I start this video, I just want to say that I am a big fan of online banks, okay? I am not someone who is anti-online bank. I am actually pro-online banks. I am constantly telling you all that you should check out EQ Bank, Simply Financial, Neo Financial. I am a online bank stan, okay? But I do realize there are some cases where they just may not work for some people. And anytime I do promote online banks, people always come to me with these complaints. So that is why I decided to make this video and say, okay, I agree with you. There are some situations where online banking may not work. So here they are. And I just want to, before you open your account, you should know about these different scenarios where online banking may not work for you. If you don't know what an online bank is, it is a bank that doesn't have a brick and mortar location. So you can't go into the bank. You only have them available online. Because they don't have those brick and mortar locations, they're able to offer you much lower fees than the traditional banks that have these brick and mortar locations. So if I take a big bank like RBC versus a small bank like EQ Bank, the interest rate that you get at EQ Bank will typically be much higher than the interest rate that they'll give you at RBC. Again, RBC has this big reputation. People are going to bank with them regardless, so they're not really worried about giving you the best interest rate. Whereas EQ Bank may not have the biggest reputation because they're not one of the big 5 banks here in Canada. So in order to entice you to stay with them, they will offer high interest rates and great customer service. The first complaint that I always hear when I tell people to get into online banking is that there is no physical branch and they're scared that somebody is going to take their money. And they would prefer that if they give their money to a bank, then they would like someone who, if they can't find their money, they can go to a physical person, grab them by the neck and tell them that, hey, I need my money back. If things happen, they can actually hold somebody accountable. With online banks, obviously this is not the case because there is no brick and mortar location. But what I will say to this, if you are somebody who desperately needs to go into a physical branch and talk to a real person in person, then yes, online banking is not for you. Physical banking with the traditional banks would be your best bet. But I do want to address the concern that people have with, oh, I'm scared of my money being stolen by these online banks. The reality is that these online banks have the same exact protection here in Canada as these virtual banks do. In Canada, we have this thing called CDIC insurance, which is Canadian Deposit Insurance Corporation, I believe, something along those lines. And this is insurance that covers your deposits in the bank up to $100,000. So what that means is if I put $100,000 in my EQ Bank account or my RBC account, if either of them becomes insolvent and can no longer give me my money, I have insurance on both of those values. A lot of people don't know that, and they think that RBC has this insurance, but EQ Bank does not. That is not the case. Both banks have the exact same insurance. So I just want to preface with that because a lot of people think these small banks are going to run away with their money, but they're held to the exact same standards as these big banks. The second reason you may want to go with the physical banks over the online banks is because of withdrawing cash. This is the one thing that I will say the traditional banks have down pat. It's that oftentimes you cannot withdraw any cash from these virtual banks, and typically, like, I don't really need cash that often. I use my credit card for almost everything, so it doesn't really apply to me except for when I'm traveling. So when I travel, you typically want to take out US dollars or Canadian dollars or some kind of currency so you can take it when you're traveling. When you have these virtual banks, sometimes that's not possible. Whereas when you have a traditional bank, this is possible for you and you're able to go into the ATM or go to the teller and get it from there. Okay, so the third thing that I'm going to mention is bank drafts. If you are somebody who needs a bank draft, say you are buying a house and they need a bank draft to prove how much you have in your account currently, when you have a physical bank account, it's much easier to just go to the teller at the bank and ask them for a bank draft and it will come immediately. When it comes to the online banks, it usually takes between 1 and 3 business days to get your bank draft. If you are in a tight turnaround time, this is a huge disappointment, and it can be a big inconvenience for you. So if you are in this situation, I don't think it's the end of the world. You can still have an online bank and do this. You just have to make sure you request that bank draft in advance. A lot of people don't know this, and then it's like they need the bank draft this day. They go online this day and they realize that it will take 1 to 3 business days. So just to avoid stories that touch, either stick with a traditional bank for their savings account for your house, for example, or just request in advance from your online bank. It's very simple. So it's not the biggest of deals, but a lot of people don't know this until it's too late, and then they're upset that they have an online bank. The fourth thing you should consider is the long waits for customer service. So when you have a bank that is completely virtual, all of the inquiries are going through their customer service, which is on the phone. Whereas when you have a bank that is a traditional brick and mortar location, some of the inquiries are going through their phones, some of their inquiries are going through in person. There are different avenues for people to go to. So I find that the lines are typically shorter for these traditional banks when it comes to their customer service online versus on the online banks. The timeline to reach a customer service agent can be a bit longer. Again, it's not that big of a deal. If you're a patient person, it's not that big of a deal. But I know some people, if you're super impatient, this may be a bit frustrating for you. So I totally get it. So this is just another thing to consider. Of course, I have not tried out all of the online banks, so I cannot speak to this. However, it is something to consider when you are choosing whether you're going to go with an online bank or a traditional brick and mortar location. The last thing that I would consider when it comes to choosing between this online bank and this brick and mortar location is that with the online banks, you have limited credit options typically. Whereas with the traditional banks, they have a lot more of a robust system with banking. So they can offer you a mortgage, they can offer you a credit card, they can offer you a line of credit, they can offer you all of these different types of things. Whereas typically with the online banks, they may have limited services. So maybe they offer you just a debit card and a savings account, a checking account. Maybe that's it. So if you are looking for a more robust banking, traditional banks typically have that down pat. With my traditional bank that I still have, I still get offered line of credits on a regular basis. I get offered credit cards. I get offered like different products that they have at the bank. With my online bank, I have never been offered any of these things except with my Simply account, because Simply is actually owned by CIBC, so that makes sense. But for the majority of these online banks, you typically aren't getting a lot of credit offers. When it comes to credit and building your credit, getting more credits is a great way to build your credit score. So that is one of the pros of having a traditional bank. They are able to offer you lots of different lines of credit, credit cards, mortgages, so many different options. I would suggest that in your banking stack, you have your free accounts that you have here, but then you also have one traditional bank so that you can still continue to grow your credit. And the good thing is you can have these accounts with the traditional banks without actually having a savings account with them. So I keep my savings account in these online banks because those are the ones that are paying me the most. So I keep my savings account with the EQs, the Simplies, the Tangerines, the Neo Financials, because they're paying me the most in interest. But I have my little checking account with my traditional bank. I choose the cheapest account possible, and then I use that to just, I have my credit card there. I pay my credit card using this account. I have my mortgage at one of these banks. I have a line of credit at these banks. So I still keep those open because I'm not going to close my credit cards. However, I use my online accounts to build up my savings and get the highest interest rate possible. So I would say if you are trying to be as wise as possible with your money, make sure that you're not attached to these traditional banks. You still have your online banks and maybe keep one of them. And again, I've heard a lot of people paying $21 a month for their banking, $17 a month for their banking, $30 a month for their banking. I'm just asking why? Why? Go with the online banks for your daily spending, and then have this separate account with your traditional bank for your credit products, and maybe one checking account with them. So I'm super curious to know, which team are you on? Are you team I'm only using the traditional banks? Are you team I'm only using the online banks? Or are you like me where you're somewhere in the middle? And make sure to leave a comment down below letting me know what you want to see next, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!